You have bad breath caused by gingivitis. You couldn't get a porn star off. Your hairpiece looks like something that was killed crossing the highway. I don't know whether to comb it or scrape it off with a shovel and bury it alive. Loser! Idiot! Wimp! Degenerate!
Hey, Ryan. Hi, this is Sarah Palin.
Ryan, Donald Trump Jr.
Hogs to win, see you. Hey, everybody, I want y'all to check out a fellow Marines podcast.
My name is Ted Nugent, and I got a call from my buddy Ryan F. Samuels, and he wants me to tell you that he's a working hard, playing all-American son of a who is celebrating God, family, country.
Welcome to the Ryan Samuels Show, one of the top political podcasts in the United States, where we have a healthy distrust for government and mainstream media. The Ryan Samuels Show is a raw, unfiltered look at American politics. Follow on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Here is your host, Ryan Samuels.
Hello, Patriots. Yes, last night was Joe Biden's State of the Union address, and what a disaster it was. Now, before we go any further, it was a disaster. Okay, there's no denying it was a disaster. The entire time he just screamed and lied, and then tried to pick fights with conservatives, with the conservative side. You know, saying, "Oh, I bet you don't want me to do that." It was childish. It didn't really unify anybody. He was clearly hopped up on something, some Adderall or some adrenaline mixture or whatever. But Donald Trump did what Donald Trump does best, and he trolled Joe Biden and Kamala Harris by using Snapchat filters for the speech, and it was epic. Watch this.
We're going to buy American. We're going to buy American. Folks, some trade rules. Buy America has been the law since 1933. Also caps and won't even go into effect until 2025. And by the way, that law was written and the benefit expires in 2025. New electric grids that are able to weather major storms and not prevent those. We're going to buy America.
So good. So Dodo Bird got up there and he screamed at everybody. And on his way there, there was a blockade that it made him late. It made him late for the State of the Union. He was like 10 or 12 minutes late getting up there to speak. And the blockade was, obviously Palestinian and Hamas supporters, and they succeeded in making him late. And we'll get into what he had to say about Gaza and Hamas in a little bit. But this video, forgive me, I went to the eye doctor today and I got my pupils dilated, so I can barely see anything. I'm just doing this on the whim. So I think this is the video with which he opened.
Good evening. If I were smart, I'd go home now.
He opens up with just this lame joke that doesn't even make sense. If I were smart, I'd go home now. It's like, well, yeah, because you suck as president and you suck at everything that you're doing. And you could see that Mike Johnson has a little smirk on his face.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Vice President, members of Congress, my fellow Americans, in January 1941, Franklin Roosevelt came to this chamber to speak to the nation, and he said, "I address you at a moment unprecedented in the history of the Union. Hitler was on the march. War was raging in Europe. President Roosevelt's purpose was to wake up Congress and alert the American people that this was no ordinary time. Freedom and democracy were under assault in the world. Tonight, I come to this same chamber to address the nation. Now, it's we who face an unprecedented moment in the history of the Union. And yes, my purpose tonight is to wake up the Congress and alert the American people that this is no ordinary moment either.
What the hell are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? You're talking about Pearl Harbor and comparing it to this speech?
Not since President Lincoln and the Civil War have freedom and democracy been under assault at home as they are today. What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas at the very same time. Overseas, Putin of Russia is on the march, invading Ukraine and sowing chaos throughout Europe and beyond. If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, I assure you he will not.
The State of the Union and your opening remarks, or one, if I was smart, I wouldn't be here. Then we're comparing Pearl Harbor to whatever's going on in the country now, and the Civil War to whatever's going on in the country now. Those are probably the two biggest events in American history, is the Civil War and Pearl Harbor. I mean, hundreds of thousands and millions of people died. And we're comparing that to this, and then we're transitioning into Ukraine. So you want to open with Ukraine. We have fentanyl flooding over the border. We have millions of illegal immigrants coming across the border, murdering people. The economy is in shambles. And we're worried about Ukraine. Nobody cares about Ukraine. The exit polls, it doesn't even meet in the top 10. So why is he so interested in Ukraine?
But Ukraine can stop Putin. Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons that needs to defend itself. That is all. That is all Ukraine is asking.
The Russia-Ukraine war, Russia is inevitable. It's inevitable that Russia is going to win. It's inevitable. They have, they produce, I think, 7-1 artillery rounds. Russia, compared to the entire, all of Europe combined, Russia produces 7 times more military armament. Forget about little tiny Ukraine. Little tiny Ukraine is going to lose. No matter how much money we throw at it, the only way they're going to win is if we actually start giving air support or put boots on the ground. That's the only way they're going to win. Or if Putin just decides that, enough is enough. But they're going to lose.
They're not asking for American soldiers. In fact, there are no American soldiers in war in Ukraine, and I'm determined to keep it that way.
That's just not true. There are American troops in Ukraine. Not in a traditional way, but there are American Army, Marine, Special Forces advisors there training their troops. They're there.
But now, assistance to Ukraine is being blocked by those who want to walk away from our world leadership. It wasn't long ago when a Republican president named Ronald Reagan thundered, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Now, my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want."
That's not true. He never said that. That's taken way out of context. He told the NATO countries that you guys need to chip in a percentage of your GDP, or I'm going to tell Putin to do whatever the hell he wants. I mean, it's hyperbole. He didn't mean anything by it. It's just Trump being Trump. But of course, they're going to use that against him and the Republicans.
That's a quote. A former president actually said that bowing down to a Russian leader, I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable.
He spent the night attacking Republicans, attacking Trump, never mentioning Trump's name, just saying my predecessor. That's it. Never calls him Donald Trump or President Trump, anything. That's the opening from Dodo Bird. And the most important issue for Dodo Bird is the war in Ukraine. Now, obviously, one of the biggest, notable events of the night was when Marjorie Taylor Greene started yelling at President Biden during a speech to mention the name of the American citizen that was killed by an illegal immigrant. And he just, in true Biden fashion, fumbles the football. He's given a give me. He tries to take it, and he just drops it.
He feels political win. He viewed it as a political win for me and a political loser for him. It's not about him. It's not about me. I'd be a winner. Not really.
What?
Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed.
Okay, her name is Lincoln, not Lincoln. He keeps saying Lincoln Riley. But it's not.
By an illegal. That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border, people pay these smugglers $8,000 to get across the border because they know if they get by and let into the country, it's 6 to 8 years before they have a hearing. And it's worth taking the chance of the $8,000.
I mean, look at Mike Johnson's face. Look at this. What is Joe Biden even talking about? What is he talking about? He's not talking about anything that's going to help his case. He's hurting himself right here. Let's listen to it again.
I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border, people pay these smugglers $8,000 to get across the border because they know if they get by and let into the country, it's 6 to 8 years before they have a hearing.
Mike Johnson, look at him.
And it's worth taking the chance of the $8,000.
Yes, we know that. We know that. That's why Trump had the remain in Mexico policy. You had to wait your 6 to 8 years in Mexico before you could come into the United States, have your trial for seeking asylum, and then leave or stay or whatever. But it's just like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, it's absolute nonsense. And Johnson just was behind him in disbelief at all the lies. It's just disbelief. I mean, where do you even start? He just gaslighted the entire nation.
Just like history watched 3 years ago on January 6th, when insurrectionists stormed this very Capitol and placed a dagger to the throat of American democracy.
Here we go. The bogus January 6th BS narrative that's just absolutely outrageous.
Just like history watched 3 years ago on January 6th, when insurrectionists stormed this very Capitol and placed a dagger to the throat of American democracy. Many of you are here on that darkest of days.
Darkest of days. It was a protest that got out of hand. A lot of those people did very wrong and bad things, and they should not have. And they should be punished. But a lot of people did nothing, and they're spending the rest of their life in jail just for walking in. Journalists for filming it, just for being there. I mean, absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
We all saw with our own eyes the insurrectionists were not patriots. They'd come to stop the peaceful transfer of power.
And they just forgot all their weapons at home, by the way. Bunch of far right gun nuts went to overthrow the government with their hats and their flags.
Turn the will of the people. January 6 lies about the 2020 election and the plots to steal the election posed a gravest threat to U.S. democracy since the Civil War.
Since the Civil War. I mean, so what happened? They had a stop and then they went back and voted like a few hours later? It's a pretty shitty insurrection, if you ask me. You didn't do a good job at all. I mean, what was the plan? You were going to get in there, stop the vote, and then put Trump in, like, it doesn't make sense. And you don't bring any weapons, like, you're reaching for the stars here, Joe.
But they failed. America stood. America stood strong and democracy prevailed. Just like
it's outrageous. It's comical and it is outrageous. And, you know, everybody's talking about Mike Johnson and how he rolled his eyes, or Marjorie Taylor Greene and how she called out the president for, you know, calling Lincoln Riley and making him say his name, making him say her name. But people don't really remember this, which I think is interesting when Donald Trump was given his address.
And God bless America. Thank you very much.
And Nancy Pelosi ripped up his speech. She ripped it up. You want to talk about unprofessionalism? You want to talk about decorum? You want to talk about the way that you act? Nobody destructed any property. They used words. But whatever, you know, Democrats can do and get away with, Republicans cannot. Now, President Johnson, you know, obviously had some, not President Johnson, Speaker of the House Johnson obviously had some things to say after the State of the Union. Let's hear what he had to say.
I'm not sure who wrote the speech, but they went out there to lob grenades tonight. And, you know, look, I don't think the American people are buying that, Sean. He tried to suggest that, you know, we're in great shape and the State of the Union is strong. We all know that's not true. The State of the Union is in decline in every measurable category. On the world stage, our sovereignty, our safety, the economy, everybody knows it. So, you know, gaslighting the American people is not going to work. And I thought it was a very big disappointment tonight.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's buying that. The polls are still going to be the polls. I mean, he may have a slight uptick only because people do not think that he is as mentally far off as people are saying he is after the speech. He was not all there. I'm not saying he was all there or all in. I'm saying that he just wasn't a complete mumbling mess. I mean, he was still a mumbling mess, but not as bad as we've seen before. But here's Mike Johnson again on the floor talking about the president's speech.
Well, we were disappointed. I mean, look, usually in a State of the Union, you have at least segments of it that are bipartisan, where we can unify and agree on things. President Biden gave none of that tonight. It was a completely hyper-partisan speech. I don't know how else to describe it. It was a campaign speech and a pretty vitriolic one at that. And so, you know, people are saying that I made funny facial expressions. I tried to keep a poker face, but it was very difficult. I disagreed so vehemently with so much of what he said, and I think the people back home did as well. So we'll see how this goes.
I mean, as it's sitting right now, based on the polls, this is going to be the last State of the Union address for Joe Biden. I mean, a lot can change between now and November. Nothing is guaranteed. You still need to go out and vote. But look at this ad that was released by the Trump campaign that just like spit roasts Joe Biden, like slowly spit roast him over a fire. It's amazing.
The State of the Union is strong. You should come. Surge to the border.
Migrants surge across from Mexico.
Pushing resources to the limit.
Some of those got part of the terror watch list.
Every state is a border state. Every city is a border city.
Sharp rise in the amount of drugs.
8,500 pounds of fentanyl.
Cartel controls everything that happens here.
America is at a breaking point.
Joe Biden is touting Bidenomics.
Bidenomics is working.
78% of voters view the economy negatively.
And that the president is to blame.
We're changing people's lives.
Unrelenting price increases.
Sticker shock is hitting millions of Americans hard.
The highest economic growth in 40 years.
The highest inflation rate, Mr. President, in 40 years.
I got that.
Crime is dominating the headlines.
Surge of violent smash and grab robberies.
24% more murders.
The buck stops with me.
The Middle East in flames. Israel has formally declared war.
The Taliban has returned to power.
Embassy shuttered. The flag coming down.
Vladimir Putin doesn't fear this president.
Xi Jinping told President Biden China will reunify with Taiwan.
Weakness invites aggression.
Appeasement has failed.
This open season on America.
The country has soured on Joe Biden.
The most vacation days taken by a president. The White House in damage control.
Where is the president? Why isn't he communicating?
That's just sad. But that's the true state of the country. That's the true state of the country. You know, people are not buying that the economy is great. People go food shopping. We hear it all the time. I hear it in the checkout line. People leaving. I spent $200 and I got one bag of groceries or two bags of groceries. It used to be $75. I mean, the average household is spending an additional like $11,500 a year. It's like $1,000 a month, an extra $1,000 per month just to survive under Joe Biden's economy. It's a freaking train wreck. It's an absolute disaster. Donald Trump came out and he gave just a little speech on the State of the Union. Let's listen to that. This should be interesting. I haven't watched this yet.
Biden is on the run from his record and lying like crazy to try and escape accountability for the horrific devastation he and his party have created. All the while, they continue the very policies that are causing this horror show to go. We cannot take it any longer as a country. Joe Biden's sad excuse for a State of the Union address aside, here are the facts. When I left office, we gave Joe Biden the most secure border in U.S. history. We gave him remain in Mexico, very tough to get, but I got it. Safe third agreements, the asylum ban, Title 42, 571 miles of border wall, rapid deportations, and much more. We had the safest border in the history of our country. As soon as he got in, Crooked Joe and his radical left lunatics deliberately dismantled each and every one of those policies that were so good, that gave us this best border. According to Tom Homan, according to Brandon Judd, the top people, they said it was the single best border we've ever had in recorded history. What's happened now is a horror show. The country, our country, is being laughed at all over the world. Over the past 3 years, Biden has actively aided and abetted the importation of millions and millions of illegal alien migrants and resettled them into your communities. At any time during the past 3 years, crooked Joe Biden, and he is crooked as you can be and the most incompetent president we've ever had, could have called off the...
He's not wrong. He's not wrong by calling him the most incompetent president we've ever had. He's not even there. I mean, who the hell's running the country?
...invasion. But to this day, he is keeping the hordes of illegal migrants and illegal aliens pouring into the country. By the time his term is up, we could have close to 20 million people in our country. And we have no idea from where they come. We have no idea who they are. They have no identification. Many come from mental institutions. Many come from prisons. They're terrorists. We have a calamity the likes of which we've never seen before. The very first bill Joe Biden sent to Congress was a plan to turn illegal aliens into voting citizens. That's just what we need. No matter what Crooked Joe says, his actions prove his priority is to import a colossal new illegal alien population and let them all stay. My priority is securing our border and sending Crooked Joe's illegals back home. Likewise, the sight of a feeble Joe Biden talking about shrinkflation, the term he uses, is one of the most ridiculous things this country has ever seen. Shrinkflation is just another way of saying inflation. It means that you're losing a lot of money because these people don't know what they're doing. It was all caused by Crooked Joe Biden and the people that surround him. And they are radical left, Marxists and fascists and communists and socialists. We have people running our country, the likes of which we have never seen before. He and the communists and his party looted trillions of dollars from you and spent it on illegal aliens and the Green New Scam, triggering the highest inflation in many, many decades. If your packages are getting smaller, that's the reason why, under my leadership, there was no inflation. We had the greatest economy in the history of the world. It's time to tell Crooked Joe Biden, you're fired.
Now, I encourage you all to fact check that for yourselves. You know, I put that on here. Make sure that you fact check that for yourselves. Disclaimer for YouTube. So, yeah. CNN even had some things to say about the Biden disaster State of the Union.
He talked about Snickers and snack chips before he ever got to the border. He was obsessed with his political rival more than he was obsessed with the condition of the American people. It was so weird. This guy lectures us all on unity, the soul of the nation, and he gives the most partisan convention speech in place of a State of the Union that I've ever heard. It's the literal opposite of unity. It's so partisan. He's obsessed with taunting Republicans. It's not statesmanlike. Yeah. And let me say one more thing on Israel. A little too much got to hear both sides on Israel and Hamas for me. No, you don't have to hear both sides. Israel's our ally. Hamas is the enemy. He lied about our ally and implied that they are not delivering humanitarian aid. They are delivering humanitarian aid. I do not like every week this administration is going back on our commitment to Israel, and it was in this speech, and it's going to get worse.
CNN calling him out, saying that he's a liar. He is lying. He is lying. There was another incident that happened. So remember those protesters that blocked his way, the President of the United States, to the State of the Union? Not one of them went to jail. This man, you see to my left, or your right, is the father of a Marine who was killed in Afghanistan. He sat through the speech quietly. And of course, Joe Biden never recognized his failure in Afghanistan. And the father yelled out not to forget the incident or his son. And he was taken out and arrested. The father of a United States Marine whose son was killed in enemy action because of a poor decision by Joe Biden was handcuffed for speaking and placed in jail for speaking. Here's the young Marine. Left behind by his government. We've seen a ton of political persecution. A ton of good enough for me, but not for thee with this administration. And it is absolutely time to get rid of Joe Biden from office and put a potato in there. I do not care. A potato would be great. But the sad thing is that somebody else would still be running the country. We're going to listen to a response to the State of the Union by Vivek Ramaswamy.
It was more unifying for the people of Ukraine than it was for the people in the United States. And so there's a lot to say that others have already said. But let me add something that maybe hasn't been said, but I think is important, which is that the speech he gave paints a caricature of Donald Trump and his policies that actually pretends like it's more like George Bush that he's running against.
Right.
And I want to say that when you think about the issues he prioritized the most, let's just see it for what it is. Donald Trump is not the Republican candidate who's calling for tax exemptions for private equity billionaires. He's not the Republican candidate who's calling for cutting Social Security or cutting Medicare or letting pharmaceutical companies off the hook when it comes to drug pricing caps. This is actually pretty ironic because within the Republican Party, starting in 2016, Donald Trump is actually the one who led a revolt within that same Republican Party, largely abandoning those same policies. So we can get into the policy debate on its own merits later. You'll have some Republicans on one side of these questions, some Republicans on another side of these questions. But what I thought was most interesting about tonight is that we got a lot of insight into what I think the Democratic machine's approach is going to be for the rest of this year, which is to paint Donald Trump's policies as George Bush's policies,
right?
Criticize Donald Trump for his persona, and pretend like Donald Trump doesn't actually agree with much of the country and even some of the Democrats in that room on issues relating to pharmaceutical drug pricing, Social Security, Medicare.
Well, a couple. We had the.
That was Vivek Ramaswamy on Louder with Crowder. Great show with Steven Crowder. But thank you guys for tuning in. Do not forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Make sure you visit RyanFSamuels.com. Pick up a copy of my new book, How to Climb the Corporate Ladder. Thank you very much. If you're listening on the podcast, please leave a review and tune in on Rumble Monday through Friday at 8 p.m.
Thanks for tuning in to The Ryan Samuels Show. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.